All right. Well, welcome everyone on this beautiful Tuesday morning to the Georgia Water Coalition's release of the 2021 Dirty Dozen report. I want to thank you all for being here with us, and I'm going to go over some housekeeping stuff before we jump in. My name is Jesse DeMumbrian Chapman. I'm the Executive Director and Riverkeeper at Coosa River Basin Initiative. And I am joined today by co-host Joe Cook with Georgia River Network, guidebook author and the author of this report, and then State Director of Environment Georgia, Jeanette Gayer, who are going to help co-host the release of the report. Before we get started, I hope that everyone, I know that there was an issue with the press release and we will be sending that out again following up this report. But if you did not see the full report, you can access that at the Georgia Water Coalition website. That's gawater.org/resources/dirty-dozen. There's also a link right on the home page at gawater.org. I will ask that everybody keep their lines muted as we go through this presentation. And then as always, we will have a question and answer segment at the end. We have a handful of the nominators here that will be able to answer specific questions. And then I'll also point y'all's attention to every single one of the slides for the items on the Dirty Dozen list have local contact information, and I very much encourage you to follow up directly with those local experts on these issues that can give much more background information on the different items on our list. So back to why we're here today. The Georgia Water Coalition is hosting this briefing to provide the release for the 2021 Dirty Dozen report. This is the 11th edition of the Dirty Dozen report from the Georgia Water Coalition. And this year we have 5 repeat items and then 7 that are brand new to the report. So I am going to turn it over to our presenters, Joe Cook and Jeanette Gayer. And while they are getting their lines unmuted, I am going to share this screen so that y'all can see our report.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, take it away, Joe.
All right, here we go. Let's get dirty. Topping the issues making return appearances in the report is Georgia Power Company's coal ash. While other states have forced power utilities to remove toxic coal ash from unlined pits at coal burning power plants, Georgia's leaders, through the State Environmental Protection Division, are poised to allow the company to keep its ash in unlined pits where it is making groundwater unfit for human consumption. Currently, coal ash is polluting groundwater at Plant Shearer in Monroe County, Plant McDonough in Cobb County, Plant Yates in Coweta County, and Plant Wansley in Carroll County. Next up, making a second straight appearance on the list is Milliken's textile plant in Screven County. This listing is largely because of another year of failure by EPD to force the company to take responsibility for its dangerous discharges into the Ogeechee River. Since 2018, EPD has failed to finalize a new pollution control permit for the facility, while the company continues to discharge harmful polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, into the river. Meanwhile, a study of fish tissue that the plant was supposed to conduct remains uncompleted. The study would have helped determine the potential health impacts to those who eat fish caught from the river. I'll now turn it over to Jeanette Gayer with Environment Georgia for our next 3 issues in our Dirty Dozen report. Jeanette, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, everybody. All right, from the Ogeechee, we are heading to the Okefenokee, where there is an ongoing fight over a proposed heavy mineral sand mine next to the Okefenokee Swamp. And this is, again, a return to the list. This year, more than 40,000 emails have been sent to EPD, more than 10,000 emails and phone calls have been received by Governor Kemp's office, all urging the state to stop this mine. In total, the state has received more than 100,000 emails about this issue. And the Okefenokee's future really rests with the EPD, which will soon decide whether to issue permits for this controversial proposal that has drawn international attention. Staying on the coast, next slide. We move to the St. Simon Sound, where the wreck of the Golden Ray cargo ship has finally been removed. The long-term impacts of the maritime disaster remain unclear. Now that the largest maritime disaster recovery effort in US history is mostly complete, coastal advocates are calling on Georgia officials to request a natural resources damage assessment by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I knew I had that mouthful coming. An NRDA by the NOAA, if you will. The process would involve a thorough evaluation of the damage done to the sound and surrounding areas and hold responsible parties accountable. Next slide. The final dirty dozen returner we have on our list is also on the coast, where legacy pollution from the Hercules landfill Superfund site in Brunswick continues to haunt the community. Since the 1990s, a landfill operated by Hercules adjacent to the Golden Isle Parkway has leached benzene and other toxic chemicals into the groundwater. Now, recent testing suggests that the contaminants are actually migrating into groundwater adjacent to properties. These tests show benzene level 70 times the maximum contaminant level goal set by the US Environmental Protection Agency for this cleanup. And now I'm handing it back to Joe to talk about a little climate change.
Thanks, Jeanette. Yeah, this is interesting. This is the 11th edition of the Clean 13 report. And this is the first time that we've actually had addressed the issue of climate change. So that's new to this year's report. We're bringing it on this year's report because our elected officials have been mostly silent and inactive on this problem. Two additional issues highlighted in the report are directly related to climate change or exacerbated by climate change. So let's dig into those. While Georgia is considered one of the states most vulnerable to climate change, it is also one of the least prepared states to deal with the public health impacts of climate change, according to a recent study by the Trust of America's Public Health. In particular, Georgia's elected officials have been slow to embrace policies that transition the state toward cleaner energy sources. Next up is the issue of a plastics rendering plant in Macon. It is said to be the largest plastics recycling facility in the nation. And the proposed plant would take plastics and break them down to diesel and other fuels. So what seems like a silver bullet for the plastics pollution problem is in fact part of the problem because it generates more greenhouse gases through the production, transformation, and ultimate burning of fossil fuel-based plastics while perpetuating our dependence on plastics. And finally, there's one pollution problem that is likely to get worse with climate change, and that is harmful algal blooms that thrive in nutrient-rich water and warm temperatures. Earlier this year, a family pet died while coming in contact with cyanobacteria at Bull Sluice Lake on the Chattahoochee River in Roswell. Since then, Chattahoochee Riverkeeper has identified 2 more locations on West Point Lake and Lake Harding with harmful algal blooms. Nutrients washing off the land from thousands of sources make this a particularly difficult problem to fix. It will take the efforts of literally millions of individuals to get it corrected. And now I'll turn it over to Jeanette for this year's Dirty Dozen Final Four.
Final four. Home stretch, everybody. And these are all pollutants, old pollutants that we are all too familiar with in Georgia and on this list. dirt, industrial spills, chicken manure, and textile plant waste. In Fayetteville, local residents and Flint Riverkeeper have filed a lawsuit against Trilith, the operators of a mixed-use development associated with one of the largest film production studios in the nation. Dirt from the development is regularly washing into Vhitewater Creek and Bennett Lake, destroying the lake and residents' use and enjoyment of it. Homeowners that bought into the Crystal Lake subdivision lake are now dealing with a muddy mess that continues to get worse. Next slide. At Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, a series of jet fuel, de-icing fluid, and sewage spills have caused fish kills in the Flint River, which many don't know actually courses through pipes and culverts for about 2 miles underneath the airport and its 5 runways. River advocates are calling for the airport to eliminate these needless insults to a river that has already suffered the expanse of Atlanta building the world's busiest airport. Next slide. In North Georgia, Gordon County residents and chicken producers are squaring off over mega chicken houses. As the demand for poultry has grown, so has the demand for efficient production methods. Air quotes there. As a result, Georgia's chicken factories have gotten larger, as has the concentration of chicken manure and the odors it brings. But more is at stake than just nuisance odors. The manure is contributing to algal blooms in downstream reservoirs in the Coosa River system and has the potential to foul private drinking water supplies. And then finally, along the Conasauga and Oostanaula rivers, history is repeating itself. When carpet manufacturers polluted these rivers with dyes in the 60s and 70s, the city of Calhoun abandoned its drinking water intake on the Oostanaula and spent millions developing a new supply on a less polluted waterway. Now, an invisible pollutant that Joe talked about earlier, PFAS, which is used to make carpet stain resistant and is known to cause human health problems, has caused the city of Rome to stop using its water intake on the Oostanaula and has prompted legal action against carpet manufacturers. Meanwhile, PFAS continue to pollute our drinking water because Georgia's environmental regulators have not actually placed limits on how much of these contaminants can be discharged into our rivers. And that concludes our through this year's Dirty Dozen. I'm going to turn the program back over to Jesse, who is opening things up for conversation or questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe and Jeanette. So we are going to move into the question and answer portion here, and we have a bunch of nominators on the call that can answer questions. Again, I just want to remind folks that the full report can be viewed on the Georgia Water Coalition website at gawater.org. Now I'm going to stop sharing the screen and invite anybody who has a question to unmute yourself, give us your name and your media outlet, and address your question, and I will help try and connect you to the folks on the call that have the answer.
Hi, Grant Blankenship, Georgia Public Broadcasting.
Hey, Grant.
Hey, how are you, Jesse?
I'm doing well.
Great. With the recent naming of a Southeastern administrator for the EPA, how has the timeline for these coal ash issues in particular, how has the permitting timeline changed now that Mr. Blackman's been named the named the Southeastern administrator for the EPA?
Now that is an interesting question.
Has that regulatory picture changed any?
I don't know if anybody else on the call. I don't think Kevin is with us.
So Grant,
my understanding. Go ahead, Fletcher. There you are.
So Grant, I can barely speculate on that. I do know that after the appointment, the majority of the existing close-in-place permits were pushed back several months. I think for the state to prepare for any kind of federal change. But Beyond that, it would be hard for me to say how that would affect the Georgia program, since the Georgia's cash-strapped and personnel short agency has decided to take on the coal ash permitting from the EPA. Don't know if that's being pushed back again because of lack of resources or because of the appointment.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hi, this is Jill Nolan with the Georgia Recorder. I have a coal ash question as well. I'm wondering, looking, the session's about to start. I'm wondering if y'all are expecting any legislation related to coal ash. There was a bill last year that stalled. I don't know if you're expecting that to, finish, cross the, expecting that to cross the finish line, or if you're expecting anything beyond that.
Jill, I'd say that we're expecting a flurry of legislation to be introduced this year. These permits were supposed to be complete in 2020. So my prediction of timelines has been off for the past 2 years. But we do expect some activity in the legislature to remedy the fact that the power company and EPD plans to leave this waste in groundwater in perpetuity.
So the legislation that is still pending is HB 647, and it actually crossed over, so it made it out of the House. It's pending in the Senate, and is in a committee that is run by a person that is now running for statewide office, which I think gives us a really great opportunity to have a state conversation about this issue, which is obviously really important. We hope they move that really good bill. It's a bill that would extend monitoring around coal ash ponds. So we think it's a good bill and think it should pass.
Thanks, Fletcher and Jeanette. Does anybody else have a question? I'll also remind, if anybody can't get on the audio but still wants to ask a question, you can just drop it in the chat.
Hey there, Ariel Schiller with 41 NBC. I'm wondering, with the Brightmark Plastics Renewal Facility that's planned to come to Macon-Bibb County, a lot of people talked about exemptions that they got, legal exemptions that potentially could harm the environment. Can you guys talk a little bit about that? Is there someone on the call that can talk about that?
I don't know if Jessica Wall with Environment Georgia is with us or not, but
Yes.
she would be the person to ask. Jeanette, you might be able to weigh in on it.
She's here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not sure if I can fully answer your question, Ariel. I will say that HB 785 passed in Georgia a few years ago, which that's not so much as a legal exemption as it changed the law and allowed plants like this to be permitted in the first place in such a way that they don't legally have to comply with Clean Air Act regulations and things like that. But were you referring more to the fact that they waived the audit review for the funding?
Yeah, because I know I've heard people talk about some exemptions that they've got, and I just kind of want to understand that a little bit better, or something that how they're skirting some of those environmental protections that are supposed to protect people.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we won't know until a little bit later, if this plant ends up receiving state or federal funding, for example, then it might have to go through a more thorough permitting process and an environmental impact statement, I believe. But I'm not sure I have the answer to your question. I'm sorry.
But I do think the answer is I would definitely check out HB 785. Is that it, Jessica?
Yeah.
From, I think, the 2017 legislative session. We can send it to you, Ariel. It
Okay.
very clearly exempts these facilities from having to get solid waste handling permits. And they're going to be handling a lot of solid waste. So we'll follow up with you and get it to you.
Okay.
Hey there, it's Drew Can with AJC. I had one follow-up question about the Brightmark plan as well. Can you just talk about what are the specific concerns about the potential threat that the plant poses to the Ocmulgee? I know there are obvious concerns that they're going to be turning plastics into fossil fuels, which will presumably be burned, but just wondering if you can talk specifically about the water threat.
Yeah, so we don't know, since the plant hasn't been built yet, we can't say exactly what the wastewater or water emissions profile will look like, but we know what's going into the plant, which is plastic. And so we know that contains lots of toxic substances like dioxins and furans and other things that are cancerous or endocrine disruptors and harmful to human health. And we also know that Brightmark's plant in Indiana did have an EPA wastewater violation earlier this year. And we know that other companies in this industry, which is more common in Europe and the rest of the world. So we've seen plants in Germany and in the Philippines, for example, that have polluted the rivers that they're on and have faced legal repercussions for that. So I can't say exactly what toxins will be going into the river, but I think it's safe to say with the track record of the plastics to fuel industry and with Brightmark specifically as a company, that this is not an entity that we want to be trusting with the quality and safety of our water.
Thomas Wheatley with Axios Atlanta. My question is really to any of y'all who would to like to answer it, but I'm sure that the response to all of these issues is different, for each issue. But if you were an average person who hears about this, other than just being aware of it, what would you recommend that person go do if they want to have an impact on this issue or on any of these issues?
Jesse, this is Gordon. I'll take a swipe at that for Thomas. Good to have that question, Thomas. Good to see everybody. Gordon Rogers with Flint Riverkeeper. Thomas, here in the 11th year, what we've learned is that the answer to your question is highly variable. It really depends on the issue. And if you look at the last few sentences of each issue, you'll see the ask and who it's directed at, or the tell and who it's directed towards. And so sometimes it's the legislature that needs to do something. Sometimes it's Georgia EPD. Sometimes, such as the case of Atlanta Airport at the moment, it's the polluter themselves. And so what an individual citizen can do after reading the report is add their weight to the issue that they care about by joining arms with the nominator. And that could be letter writing, email writing, showing up at the legislature. If they're an adjacent property owner, joining in to comments, et cetera. So it's very much tailored to the individual issue. And we try, and I think Joe does an excellent job of tailoring each item to what needs to happen. The instructions are fairly clear, I think. And I think that's a great question. Thank you, Thomas.
And I'll piggyback off of that a little bit, and also just remind that the contact information for all of the local nominators are in the report. And if somebody is wondering where to best put their energy, reaching out to that nominator is a great way to do it. Because we saw Rena just dropped into the chat. They have a Protect Okefenokee action alert that is up and live, and a lot of these local nominators have been working on these issues and can direct you exactly to the kind of folks that we want comments sent to. Yeah, that's a great question. Do we have anyone else on the line with a question? Well, I will just thank everyone again for joining us this morning. We are going to pull down the recording of this release here shortly, and we'll send that out so you can have that to review if you like. We'll probably post it up on our YouTube channel, the Georgia Water Coalition's YouTube channel. But beyond that, I want to thank you all for joining us for the Dirty Dozen release, and for all of our nominators that joined us as well. Thanks, and I hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank y'all for your time.